as head of design at Artsy, he led a team of designers to build Artsy as the place to buy, sell, and learn about art. Now, he's also the author of Product Design for the Web, which explores the evolving discipline of software product design. And today he will be sharing his experience on deep design, designing Southeast Asia's super app. And with that, let's welcome Randy.
Hi, everyone. You can say hi back. It's good. All right, good. Okay, cool. Excellent. I am relatively new to Singapore, so that hi is really like an introduction. Like I've met some of the design community here, but I'm still getting to know people, getting to know the tech community and business community. So very pleased and thankful to be here. Opportunity to meet more of you. I've been here for about 8 months, and I came from New York City, where I spent 15 years leading design teams inside technology companies. You have the most recent organization called Artsy that sold contemporary art, which is an interesting sort of multi-sided marketplace. But I spent about 8 years leading design at an e-commerce company called Etsy. And that's where I learned a lot about building software products at scale, where I learned about what it means to take a private company public, what it means to think about multidisciplinary sort of leadership across many functions, including functions where you have deep expertise and credibility, and other areas where you don't, but you've taken responsibility for those things. And so some of that experience is kind of packed into this perspective here, and I believe it's a little bit of what I bring to the design organization at Grab so far, and hopefully more in the future. As I mentioned, eight months in, you're probably just starting to experience some changes that have maybe helped nudge the improvement on if you're a Grab customer. And if you're not, you should be one starting today. Thanks. So coming here to meet with you all, I was thinking about these two questions. I think here's our first one, right? What if every designer thought like a scientist, right? And these aren't my words, actually. The designer on our team named Karul asked me this question. And I think it frames how he thinks about developing the talent in his part of the team and how we improve the user experience. I'm going to touch on this in just a few minutes. And the other is, what if we design from the depths of our stack all the way to the heights of our community's aspiration? Can we take our mindset around holistic design thinking, around creating experiences for customers, both internal and external customers, and apply them everywhere from what technology we may use to build some microservices, to how we address people's hopes and dreams or their perception of what's possible in their lives. What if we did that? I don't know. So, yeah, just briefly, I lead the design organization at Grab. It's about 165 designers today across, I use design, kind of capital D, broadly defined design. I'll talk a little more about some of the functions inside the teams. We talk about how they apply to some of these concepts. Of course, we serve customers in 8 countries across Southeast Asia with the intention and purpose and hope of driving Southeast Asia forward by improving the quality of life for everyone. Right? It's a big ambition, and it manifests itself in a variety of ways, different products and services. So I'm going to take you through 3 different ideas here, 3 different topics that kind of stack upon one another and how we think about creating this experience that ultimately should help us address the full sort of stack of what we deliver. Right? One, a learning mindset, which is about a cultural shift and sort of a shared point of view about how we do things. Total design thinking, and by that I mean sort of holistically considering all of the possibilities and what the potential is when we do that, sort of the value of it. And finally, service design methods as a set of tools and ways in which we do that total design thinking and delivery. So learning mindset. Well, I guess it's worth asking, how many of you can ride a bicycle? I don't know. I would assume many of you, yeah? You can ride a bike? You remember riding a bike? Okay. Not as many hands as I expected. Sorry. I think when you learn to ride a bicycle, there's this, it's sort of amazing experience, I think, personally, where you're kind of struggling, you get support, you get help, whatever. Then all of a sudden you're doing it on your own and you don't even realize it. That's the beautiful part, is when you don't realize you're doing it on your own, but you already are. And it's such this magical life experience, I'd say. And this translates to a lot of other learning experiences. For me, this translated into learning how to play guitar and learning how to build websites. I put my first web page on the internet when I was in 5th grade. And it was a directory of cardiac centers at hospitals in the county where I grew up. And that's connected to a bunch of other personal motivations, maybe. But in both these areas, the learning experience really entailed sort of having some curiosity about something, right? You're like, I wonder how this works, or if I can do something. Not really knowing how. Maybe seeing examples out in the world or other reference points, right? I wonder if I could make something like that other thing, or if I can make this instrument sound like this thing I heard on the radio. And you start to learn some patterns and you kind of fumble around, then all of a sudden you get the right note, and you're like, yes! And then you do the note after it and it's the wrong note, and you go, no, right? And then you repeat this cycle over and over again, slowly getting more yeses and more yeses and more yeses until it sounds reasonably good. Similar to the experience of sort of what it's like to build a software product from the ground up, particularly your first time, right? It's sort of failure. I got something. Now you've got one win you've kind of stacked behind you, and then you fail on top of it a bunch of times and stack in another one. From my perspective, this is essentially how good stuff gets done over time. But orienting to it and actively taking a perspective around treating your discipline and your practice as one in which you try and fail and learn is really, really powerful. So there's lots of common sort of dialogue, I think, around design being at one end, this sort of a craft, right? And this making discipline, or it's this sort of strategic endeavor, this thinking discipline, right? And then maybe you translate that thinking into how you operate those ideas and deliver the thinking into the craft. And so design is planning. All these things are accurate. And in fact, when I arrived inside Grab, these are similar perspectives on design. Nothing's wrong with any of these perspectives, and they remain true. But I think they're also insufficient. I don't think that simply thinking about the craft of design and the strategy of design ends up addressing the full possibility that we can through the experiences we can deliver. This is why we've taken this different mindset. Right? To stop thinking about design as an output, right? We do some things, that thinking and strategy, and then that making, in order to create an output that is a thing, in this case, Southeast Asia Super App, right? And instead, to think about change as the output. Okay? And I'll walk you through like a couple details here. Right? So if we think about design as this learning discipline, this learning practice primarily, right? Then all the thinking and the making and the planning are just subsets of our pursuit of learning things. Right? It's a byproduct of the fact that we come to learn every day. Right? And it starts with curiosity. Curiosity about our customers, most of all. Curiosity about the world they live in, the conditions they face, the circumstances around them, right? So the context they operate in. Curiosity about our own products and services, how they're being received or understood or valued or not, right? Curiosity about our own colleagues and how they work and what motivates them, right? Curiosity about the technology, the systems, the services that lie underneath what we're designing, so that we can understand how to best take advantage of them, manipulate them, change them, ignore them, whatever may get you to the right outcome. Right? So it starts with curiosity. And then in between, we make some things, and we do a whole bunch of other stuff that looks like what we typically call design, and I'll address that in a second. All for the pursuit of changing behavior, or I would say changing perception and behavior, right? So the output of the design isn't the design itself, but is the change we've created, right? The change in how people see things, or the change in what people do, right? So that stack in between is a whole bunch of different processes, methods, disciplines. And I'm going to mention them briefly because these layers of how we think about organizing and delivering that effort is intentional and important. So at a high level, you could look at this and say, oh, it's like a list of the sub-teams inside a design organization, which is accurate. But what is important is not so much what those names are, or that's how we've divided the team, but is what they do in concert with one another. So our design strategy and research function is this hybridized team of service design experts and UX researchers that we intentionally have brought together into one part of the team. Because one of the things I've experienced, many times in the past, and I experience again at Grab, and I'm sure many of you would see this in your organization, you'll do great UX research, you have solid insights, and then you struggle with how to connect those insights into actionable change in the product development itself. This is a typical problem, right? And so you invest a lot of time or energy in understanding customers in your product, and you still struggle with what to do to embed those learnings and understandings in the work itself. And what we sort of realized is that this group of trained sort of service design experts inside our organization, we're only doing sort of formal service design about 50% of the time, right? So we had several people who are service design experts only doing service design half the time. Right? So what were they doing with the other half of their time? Right? Turns out they had become partners for our product managers, our design managers, some engineering leads, in helping them formulate what a healthy product development process should look like. And that shouldn't be too surprising once you think about it, because if we understand the mechanics of service design, where you're sort of mapping out all of the possible sort of touch points that inform a large sort of service that you deliver to a customer, everything operational and technical, online, offline, et cetera, it means that people have an understanding about how things work from beginning to end. And so other people are trying to make something go well from beginning to end. These become good partners in helping you do it. Right? And so what we decided to do is, rather than say, oh, that's strange, maybe they should find a way to spend all their time doing service design, we said, let's embrace this momentum, actually, and say, these are now everyone's partner. We're going to call it design strategy, and we're going to embed these people at the beginning of the process with everyone. And they're going to be there to set the context for what enables good design to happen along the way. Right? Now, conveniently, right, they have a great working relationship with the research members of the team. Right? And so now that these service design experts, that we've changed their name to design strategists, it's fine, are partners in the full product development cycle from the beginning, and they have a strong relationship with the researchers, they're able to take all those research insights and learnings that we've had, right, that we might struggle to apply to the actual product development process, and embed them in that context setting at the beginning of the process, right? So it's this interesting kind of like I don't know, I would say it's like a jujitsu move, of taking the insights we needed to make actionable, along with the people who are already partnering at the beginning of the process, and formalize it. Right? Then we gave it a name, design strategy. It's great. This is all about setting the context for our design work. Then we have a whole content strategy and writing function of the team. And as I was sharing with some of the Stack team here I met earlier today, I think this is one of the areas of huge sort of usability impact and opportunity for improvement that is often overlooked in experience design organizations in general. Not nearly enough attention put on UX writing, content strategy, design writing. Also undervalued, I would argue. And I expect to see over time that we see content strategy as a function increase in the understanding of its value, the way we've seen design increase in its understanding of value over time in relationship to engineering, as an example, inside organizations. We're not there today. Grab's not there. I don't expect many of you are, but I would predict that we see that in the next 5 to 10 years. Finally, we have this product design function, which is the beginning to end, holistic, sort of conception of the designed experience, both partnering with those design strategists, product managers, et cetera, down through the delivery, past QA, understanding the performance of the design itself. So yes, these designers make screens and apps and prototypes, et cetera, but they're responsible for that full journey. There are no more UX designers or UI designers at Grab. Product designers, beginning to end, full expectations. That's not a cost-saving measure that says one person can do 2 jobs. It's definitely not that. It is a different way of thinking about the design process that is sort of post-industrial and is not about the different stages of the process being executed by different people, but rather empowering and expecting people to have a point of view across the entire arc of the project. Yep. It also means we have to, in this learning context, support and train and develop talent for people who may have entered the profession or entered the discipline with a particular interest or focus in one of those areas of the process, right? So you do need to learn and practice different skills to be able to work that way, but I believe it's possible, and I believe it's the most powerful way to create meaningful design experiences. Yep. Do we have an engineering function inside the team? You call this design engineering, UX engineering, give it any name you want. Engineers inside design that do a few very important things. One, they build super high fidelity prototypes when we need to test things that we could not prototype otherwise. I can't talk about some of those things here because they're not out yet, but you have to imagine a level of interaction and complexity that some other lightweight prototyping mechanism could not simulate, that we need to get on the ground and test with customers, right? Maybe has complex data in it and other things. So that's really important because we want to validate these concepts. It would be far more expensive to build the thing out in full and learn we weren't so right. Yeah? The other thing they do is build tools for designer to speed up and accelerate and simplify the design process. Yeah? And then we have a design operations team, which essentially invest into a similar thing. What are the tools, culture, processes to simplify and accelerate the design process? They're not so much making software as they are sort of non-software versions of that to support this whole operation. Yeah? So we're doing this whole chunk of stuff in between. That's where all the work is. There's a whole lot of work there. But again, we're doing all these things to kind of satisfy that curiosity that we have in this learning mindset, right? That we want to understand more about the world. We want to understand more about our own choices and their effectiveness. And we want to understand those things so we can make choices. And we want to make those choices in the hope that they change people's perception or behavior. Okay? And this has resulted in a learning culture. It's really awesome. Just in the last 60 days, inside our organization, we've developed learning programs around, so far, these 5 topics, and actually 2 more have now sort of sprung up organically, which is awesome, where we're running through courses developed internally, courses and workshops developed internally by other experts inside Grab for our design organization. Behavioral design for designers, microanimation, a nice craft one, workshop facilitation for both innovation and alignment, as well as data analytics for designers. AI is kind of on the stack next. And so our message to our designers is for them to get crazy curious about the world they live in and their customers, that we build and do all of that effort and work in between to learn about those customers, and that output of all that learning is change. Okay? So I'm going to move through these other things quickly. I have some limited time. Total design thinking. Okay. Total design is intended to frame our sort of a practice of intentionally creating these responses or behavior changes by addressing and considering every variable of every touch point of an experience. Okay? I think there are a handful of principles of what makes a good total design. I'll run through them with you quickly. Yep. So one, I think that a total design experience is coherent. I think a nice example of this is something as simple as material design as we see it applied to Google's suite of services. Right? They're not there yet. It's not consistently applied everywhere. But I think we can all agree that Google's products and services are far more coherent today than they were 3, 4, or 5 years ago. And it's pretty incredible to see that amount of improvement at that scale. Right? The second is I think that a total design has a focus. That doesn't mean the focus has to be narrow, but it does have a focus. It has some defined bounds and edges. A great example of this for me was a product in the States called Square. It's a point of sale product to process payments and things. Square rubbed up against the edges of a bunch of other things. You know, they tried to do e-commerce, they tried to help people run stores for small businesses, they tried to do a bunch of other things. And every time they kind of went outside those edges, it just didn't work anymore. Other people have satisfied those other areas, you know, perfectly well. And it's possible to change your focus over time. But for them, like where Square always nailed it was simply this moment of payment. And when they've focused there on that moment of payment, it was this coherent experience from top to bottom, from the brand to the customer experience, the communication, the marketing. It all made sense. And I think that that focus allows it to happen. 3, it has to be distinct. There's a bunch of interesting things we can talk about Tesla, but I think why it's important in this total design context to think about something being distinct is that if we think about perception change as part of the change we want to create as an output of design, there's almost a marketing component of that, right? And we only understand the totalness of the thing. We can only see it, right? If it somehow stands out from the other things around it, if it's distinct, right? So there's a version of design that I think says design is invisible, right? And if we've done it right, it sort of sits in the background and we never knew it existed. I like that idea functionally. I don't like that idea practically. I think that integrated marketing thinking in design is far more powerful than thinking about these things separate. And in order to make that total designed experience noticeable, recognizable, to get credit for it, to get people excited about it emotionally, it needs to be distinct from the other things around it. Yeah, I think Tesla does a very, very good job at that in a variety of ways. Maybe not least of which is a kind of enigmatic CEO that's rather distinct. 4, I think that total design must consider the relationship of time with the designed experience. That may be how often or frequently something is used. That may be how long the service is relevant for someone. That may be, is it sustained or is it momentary? I think that, well, this is a scene after Burning Man. I've never been, I'm not like a Burning Man enthusiast or anything. But what I love about Burning Man is that it's such a sort of cultural phenomenon in this distinct moment, right? And then it has all these terms of engagement about when it begins, when it ends, and how it disperses, right? It is distinctly designed to exist in this moment in time. And in fact, part of its value, part of why you're excited or interested in it, is because it only happens in this moment in time. If this was a sustained experience, it would just be a weird dystopian art future somewhere in the desert of America, right? Like, no, that's different, right? But instead, it's this special like weekend, right? It's a special sort of like 5-day experience that people look forward to for the other 360 days after they experienced it the last time, precisely because the time component has been considered, right? And finally, I think that the total design experiences comes back to some of that marketing thinking. It also comes back to the perception and behavior change. I think that the total design considers the emotional part of the designed experience. Again, not only functional and emotional, right? For me, for me recently in the last few years, I think that I encourage you all to look at Solange Knowles as an artist and as a performer, right? Not only the songs, which are good, I think, but if you look at Solange Knowles as sort of a designed experience, live performances, social media presence, engagement in social issues, sort of the projection of a version of sort of progressive confidence that's like super inclusive for a broad set of people, even though it has a point of view about a community she comes from and a point she's trying to make about it. It is an extremely powerful emotional experience in its content, but also in how it's delivered, right? From this stack of like sort of deep cultural meaning up to good stage lighting, right? That reflects itself in the album art, that respects itself in the social media stories. It is so, so well done as a total design experience. Yeah, she's just an amazing artist. So I asked someone what they thought a good sort of total design experience was. I sent a query out on Twitter a while ago, and the first response I got was Disney World, which I agree. I actually grew up in Orlando, Florida, and went to Disney all the time as a kid. And the older I get and the more I reflect on it, the more I think about the impact that experience had on me. Yeah, this is what someone said on Twitter. Another quick example. I see the time, so I'll wrap up here in just a minute. Another quick example is this amazing museum in Bentonville, Arkansas, which is where the headquarters of Walmart is. There's no other reason why an amazing art museum would be in Bentonville, Arkansas. But what's amazing to me about this particular art museum, and I think actually a similar condition happens here in Singapore a lot. It's one of the reasons I'm so excited to live here now, is that the intervention of the museum in the space, right? And the design choices about how it exists on the land and what it does and what service it provides has created a bunch of experiences sort of around it, right? And this is where we talk about focus. There was this focus not on the site itself, but on the community around it. So it extended it just enough, right? And in all of the sort of outdoor facilities of this art museum in Bentonville, they integrated bike paths. And biking culture was not a part of Bentonville, Arkansas before this museum existed. But they proactively built bike paths into the museum's property. And as you look at the many years that have sort of existed since its opening, the biking culture has been firmly implanted in that community and now is extended beyond it. Other people are building bike paths to connect with the art museum, with the art museum's property. And there's this like healthy, thriving bike culture because of an art museum, right? Interesting to think about your choice of scope there and what you choose to influence, yeah? So finally, and this will be very brief, when we think about all that curiosity to understand our customers, plus total design thinking, like I just described, these attributes, right? We have to combine this with service design methods, right? And some of you in this room are probably very familiar with the concept of service design. Others of you might not. I'm not diving deep into those methods here, although hopefully you learn a bit more about that. But service design methods are the toolkit by which we realize the total design thinking and satisfy that curiosity to change behavior. And I think we can do it in changing behavior about the technology infrastructure itself, both what it ought to be and how we use it, in the products and services we build and how we deliver those to our customers, and then the choices they make when they use those products, right? The behaviors they make, and the perceptions that they have about the product, about the service, about the brand. Yep. So I'll repeat this for you and just leave it with you. Design is learning, and I hope, like me, you will be excited tomorrow not to get up to go to work, but to get up to go to learn. And I want to thank you all very much for having me here. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your experience today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Randy.